Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
What's going on, kids?
Alan Seiler,
This gives me the right.
and Veronica Dashel.
I was wondering why he was looking away. So those of you on the audio podcast, Alan was looking away from the camera as we were starting our introductions. And I was like, what is he doing? What is he looking at? Why? Doesn't he know we're about to do this?
It's a dramatic reveal.
Yeah.
Whenever anyone looks away in the Star Trek world, I think of Shatner as the enemy within on the transporter pad with his back turned.
Tonight, we're going to be celebrating our 140th episode.
140.
That's right. We've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
And by talking about the 140th episode of every Star Trek series. But before we get into that, Alan, do we have some news this week?
We have some news this week. First of all, the newest news that there's possible to report is that the actors' strike is over. They have reached an agreement. And what this means is that Star Trek productions that have been waiting to go into active production can now do that. What do you call it? Strange New Worlds season 3. Pretty much every bit of pre-production was already complete. So at this point, as soon as they can get actors on set, they will start shooting, which is great news. Section 31. They will start going into pre-production from what I understand. And Starfleet Academy, that's the next one that I think it's like just so early in the stages now that, you know, they haven't even like started yet, but it's the next one in line to begin.
Yeah.
So good news. Well done, actors.
Yeah,
Yay.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Star Trek Prodigy has been nominated for an Emmy. And, you know, as certain people have said online, yes, this is just an Emmy for outstanding sound design and editing, but it's still an Emmy recognition for a phenomenal show that had been on the axe from Disney Plus and has now been picked up by Netflix.
Paramount Plus.
I was like, did it go to Disney briefly?
Oh my God. I've got
Disney Plus.
I have so got Doctor Who on the brain. Everything is Disney Plus right now. And the good news about that is that, well, first of all, you know, almost any time that a Star Trek show has ever, or movie has ever been nominated for an Emmy or an Oscar or anything, it's always technical. There's almost never anything for writing or directing or acting or anything like that. So I don't think that this is a slight. I think this is par for the course, but it's got recognition, and that's a good thing. And just today, Netflix announced that season 1 will be launching on their service on Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas to all Trekkers everywhere.
That's right. Yeah, and this, like you said, this came up on our Facebook group, and yes, I would rather they get some Emmys for the writing, for the acting.
Yeah,
there's some phenomenal stuff in there, but I'm happy they're getting some accolades at all.
Yeah.
And I hope they win, and Netflix can start advertising their new Emmy-winning family series.
Right? Wouldn't that just be the best thing ever?
Yes.
Oh,
Take that, Paramount Plus.
Even if it's an Emmy for catering, I'll take it because you're still an Emmy winner.
Right on.
Amen to that.
In a little bit of a side note, Walter Koenig is going to be the newest co-host on the 7th Rule podcast.
Yeah.
Doing a rewatch of the original Star Trek series, which that is crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say the podcasting thing for Trek alum is really exploding. I listen regularly to the Delta Flyers, and then there's what's the other one? The one with the gentleman from Enterprise, the Shuttle Pod. Yeah. And then Gates McFadden has a podcast where she's been doing interviewing, and she's been getting a lot of good people on that. So everybody's jumping onto this.
Well, yeah. And you know who else does?
Who's that?
Us.
Why
do you think all these other people jumped on the bandwagon? Because we launched it.
What we did wrong was we didn't star in Star Trek first. We should have thought about that before and then do a podcast.
Darn it. Yeah. We forgot that one step.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And that's about it for this week. Unless there's something I don't remember, but I think that's it.
Fantastic. Keith, do we have some This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, and also finishing up on that podcast thing, we mentioned that the Delta Flyers with Garrett Wong and Robert Duncan McNeil, Terry Farrell, and Armin Shimmerman are joining that podcast. So everybody's lining up to do podcasts.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, I had two things. This one I thought was interesting. This was a birthday that I had to do because this was a trip. On the 4th of November, 1956, a woman was born who was a regular background actor on the entire run of Deep Space Nine. She played, the only person pretty much with a name was a Starfleet officer, Rita Tenenbaum, who, if I'm not mistaken, was Miles O'Brien's wife in the episode where they went to the planet where they get in this real timey-wimey thing, and you know, they ended up with their own descendants, and then if the ship stayed there, they were going to basically become the parents of an entire new civilization. She's done a lot of other guest roles, mostly uncredited. But the reason I want to bring this up is the woman on her first day of appearing on the backlot to film for Deep Space Nine, the security guard said he couldn't let her on the lot. And she said, why? He goes, because we can't let Borg onto Deep Space Nine. And the reason is this lady's real life name, born in 1956, is Ivy Borg.
Wow.
Her last name is B-O-R-G. And somehow, not only was she born with the name Borg, but then she ended up being an actress, and then she ended up getting background roles in Star Trek, which is kind of crazy.
I just love the idea that Ira Stephen Bear instructed the guards at the gate not to let any Borg
Yes.
into Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, and I read an interview with her. She said she thought he was serious. Then, of course, the guard just let out a laugh, and I'm sure he was just waiting. You know, like you said, Charles. I wonder how many days they were like, "Okay, I can't wait. Here she comes. Here she comes. Do the joke. Do the joke."
Right.
Ivy Borg. And the other thing I thought was interesting, because Charles had posted, I think it was Charles had posted about this recently. I found this very interesting. As we all probably know, March the 11th, 1964, the very first draft of what became the outline for Star Trek was written by Gene Roddenberry. And that's March 11th, 1964. I found this very interesting. On the 8th of November, that same year, only a few months later, the 3-foot model of the Starship Enterprise began construction. This is, of course, one of many versions of the Enterprise. There's a mini model, there's the 11-foot model, but the 3-foot model was the one that really sold Gene once they had that model in place. Because as you probably know, I've read so many things about whether or not the original Enterprise, as we saw it, was upside down or not. There's all these stories about how it was flipped. There's all these things about Buck Rogers and Forbidden Planet and so forth. But just a few months later, what is arguably the most iconic spaceship in science fiction history was finally created in its final form. It is still, to my knowledge, the only fictional spaceship to be displayed with any permanence in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum.
I thought the 11-foot one was the one that was.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, the 11th one is the one in there. The 3-foot one is most famously known as the model that was sitting on top of Flint's desk in Requiem for Methuselah. When Kirk was calling the Enterprise and telling them to go contact Starfleet, he pushes the button and a little model shows up on the top. That's the 3-foot model. And the other thing I found was interesting, there's a lady, I think we're all aware of, Bijo Trimble.
Right.
Yeah, she was, of course, instrumental in getting the shows brought back and saved and so forth. And she handled fan mail for them. And she had a quote that was very interesting. She said, as part of handling the fan mail, I only handled the fan mail for the actors. Had I, however, counted the fan mail for the Enterprise model, it would have by far had the most fan mail.
Who's writing a letter to the Enterprise model?
Isn't that wild?
I really like the way you blink.
Yeah. And then Charles, you had just posted, it's not the same one, right? But they just found...
No, the actual 3-foot model. After that,
That's
it ended up on Gene Roddenberry's desk, and it was on his desk for many years. And then when they were going into production on Star Trek The Motion Picture, he lent it to the effects company. I think it was Able and Associates. And it was lost. He never got it back. And it's been lost since the mid-70s. And then like 2 weeks ago, it turned up on eBay. Like someone... So like one of these people... I think they were posting under a pseudonym, but the story is that they had bought a storage unit and opened the storage unit and they found this model in there. But fans jumped all over that. And we're comparing photos and a little crack in the base to the crack in the base on Gene's desk. And I think it was deemed to be authentic. And then it was disappeared off of eBay. It was only up for $1,000. And I'm really glad I didn't see it because I would have gotten in trouble in Veronica.
Dude, no kidding. No,
You
I'd
would
have
not
that
have
thing
gotten in
right
trouble
now.
if you only spent $1,000 on that.
But
No, that's true, because then you could sell it for a lot more.
I would not, though.
I know you wouldn't.
We would put in a glass case.
If I have to choose between Veronica and the 3-foot model.
Oh, no.
It's fine. We'll put it in a glass case and use it as like a coffee table.
But I think it's being returned to Rod Roddenberry, and I don't know the details of the deal or anything like that. But you can't sell stolen things on eBay.
That's right.
You know, so I don't know all the details of what went on, but it was a pretty exciting thing when all of a sudden that popped up and it was all over the fan groups of like, what is going on? Like this thing disappeared 50 years ago.
Right.
So the same model. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, luckily someone at least didn't throw it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is
right.
Yeah, this is very true. And that's this week in Trek history.
Or give it to their kids to put like decals on and stuff.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we break, I just want to say that Matt Sweatman says happy 140th. That's a lot of candles to blow out.
Oh.
And he also says that we will always be his favorite Trek podcast.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, Matt, that's the sweetest. Thanks, buddy.
No, we love our listeners. If you enjoy the show, though, consider giving us a rating and sharing the podcast and helping us get the word out because, we love doing this show.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll take a quick break to promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show, but don't go away because when we come back, we'll be celebrating our 140th episode by discussing the 140th episode of every Star Trek series that made it that far. So don't go away.
Shall we run a thing?
Yeah, I thought you were going to run the ad.
Okay, I'll run a thing. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Gina Shock from the Go-Go's, fabulous drummer of the Go-Go's.
Hi, this is Tony Levin of King Crimson.
Hi, this is David Fishoff of the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
Hi, this is Richard Evans. I am the author of Listening to the Music the Machines Make.
Hi, this is Teresa Kariakis, punk rock photographer.
Hi, I'm Tom Beaujour, author of Nothing But a Good Time, and you are listening to Modern Musicology.
Modern Musicology.
Modern Musicology.
You're listening to Modern Musicology, so, pay attention. You might learn something.
All right. Now, do we need a spoiler alert this week?
No.
I don't think we need a spoiler alert this week. Everything we're talking about is like 30 years old.
Yeah, it was on Netflix for a really long time, and it's on Paramount Plus now.
Not long enough a time.
Not long enough time.
Right.
And it's on DVDs and Blu-rays, and they're not like super expensive anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Wayne says
happy 140th.
What's up, Wayne?
Thank you,
Thanks,
Wayne.
man. Appreciate it.
I think we have some people like Elaine who haven't watched all the Deep Space Nine, but I think she did watch it. I think she said that Matt was talking to her about this is what's going on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, it turns out she watches them when we pick one, so we just need to pick every DS9 episode. Elaine will have to watch it.
Next week, we're going to talk about DS9. All of it.
All right. So, tonight we're talking about the 140th episode of every Star Trek series that made it that far. So the list goes Face of the Enemy, Change of Heart, and Good Shepherd.
3.
Yeah, that's all
Good
3
stuff.
of them. And it's a good. I mean, it's been interesting as we've gone through. We started this at our 20th episode.
Yeah.
And every 20 episodes, we do this. We had 40th episode, 60th episode, etc. And it's been interesting watching how the shows evolve over that period of time.
It is. And it's also interesting to see what we land on those, hallmark numbers where sometimes it's I can only remember one other time before this that it was like a really good batch of episodes. A lot of times it's very, hit or miss, we'll say.
Yeah, well, because it's random.
It is random.
The series have different amount of episodes per season.
Yep.
And it's not like we're picking season finales where they're putting their best effort forward.
Right.
Or we're not picking sweeps week when they're, it's just however it falls.
Week. I've forgotten about
Remember
that.
Sweeps week?
Yeah, really. But that's what's been fun about this is that it's given us the opportunity to talk about episodes that we might not have ever addressed in any way, and that's what's been so much fun about this. And now, of course, as Matt Sweatman pointed out on our Facebook page today, we have one more of these, number 160. After that, we have to come up with a new
gimmick.
Yeah, we've got to think of another thing where we can do this kind of thing with. But
we have 40 weeks to come up with something.
We could just start sequentially numbering everything that comes after, or something weird.
We'll brainstorm it.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was some?
Yeah.
And if fans, listeners, watchers have suggestions for us, feel free to pitch it to us.
Yeah.
In fact, you could do that by calling 307. I don't remember the number. What is it? 307
387 1701.
1701.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the Earth Station Check hotline, which to date nobody has called except for me.
Except for you. So it's worth it to have that one call.
Right. Let's get in the face of the enemy.
Yeah.
All right, y'all better go. Y'all better start, because once I start, I'm not gonna.
When I was a kid, I thought they cut her hair for this episode. Because all of a sudden she had short hair.
Wow.
I didn't know how wigs worked back then, I guess.
I didn't either at that age.
Well,
I don't think I did until I was 30.
I mean, this is a big one for Troy, because she didn't often get these kind of episodes.
Right.
Often when Troy got an episode, it was some man has come onto the ship and she has either a relationship or they're a fascination with her, and there's some kind of mental thing going on.
Yep.
She gets violated in some way. That's usually that's like a standard Troy episode. So the fact that all of a sudden she wakes up and she's a Romulan, at least in appearance, and she's on a spy mission is cool. And yeah, I mean, if I was Starfleet Intelligence, I'd be I mean, I don't think Starfleet Intelligence was behind this, but if I was Starfleet Intelligence, I'd be recruiting every freaking Beta Z. Like, why are you not on a spy mission already?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things about this. First of all, because this is such a different setup and a different kind of thing to give Troy, you kind of watch this episode, at least for the first time, without really knowing where this episode is going to go.
Right.
Like, it throws you on the back foot immediately. And that's one of the things that I love about it so much. Very recently in one of our episodes, I talked about a thing that Terry Farrell once said. So I'm just going to bring it up because it's pertinent to this episode. Terry Farrell, many years ago, back when DS9 was kind of newish, said in an interview that you would not have characters like Dax and Kira had it not been for Gates McFadden and Marina Sirtis constantly hounding the writers to give them more to do, to give them meatier roles, to give them important things to do in episodes, to give them action episodes. And this is exactly an example of what Terry Farrell is talking about. This is taking a character that you have, kind of a preset parameter for, and breaking that character out of those parameters and seeing what that character is going to do with it.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned the opening, the way it sort of starts and she's already she wakes up and realizes she's a Romulan. It's very Twilight Zone-ish.
It
where
really is.
She knows what's going on, and it sort of just throws you into it, which is a nice opening to the story.
Yeah. Veronica, what did you think of this one?
This is one I actually remember watching when I was younger. I mean, I guess it's because it's kind of like, because she's a new face, but it's obviously still her. I mean, I don't remember it, but I remember having seen this when I was younger.
What did you think of it this time?
It was fantastic. I really liked how she just knew how to take charge and how to, not that she knew how to address people, but she knew how to act and come across as a Romulan and respond to some of those questions that were being thrown at her by the captain.
I liked at the beginning when she's first on the bridge with the commander, you can see that she's a little hesitant. She's not as forceful in the way she addresses the commander. And it takes that full scene. I mean, pretty much by the end of that scene, she, knows what she's doing. But, I'm assuming at that point, she has read the people around her. She knows how her react, whatever she does, she knows what they're going to do. She kind of figures out how they're going to react and what she needs to do to get them to react the way that she wants to. And from that point on, she is just a force.
What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I thought it was a good episode. It's not surprisingly listed by Marina Sirtis as one of her favorite Star Trek episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And Charles, I think you made that very interesting about the point about how she was used, because as I was scanning through to find the episode, because I was just scanning through whatever to look for it, and I saw the Masterpiece Society which is an episode where these genetically engineered people have this weird planet where you basically are genetically engineered to do one role, and there's a relationship or romantic interest between Troy and the leader. Also around that same time I came across was Man of the People. That episode where the dude basically uses Troy as a literal psychic dumping ground where he dumps all his negative feelings into her.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. This was a meaty episode for Deanna Troy. And what I find very interesting about it is, of course, in real life, you know that this is closer to Marina Sirtis's real life personality than Deanna was. But as she goes through the episode, when she basically gets to the point, and I've seen this a billion times, and she tells that dude, basically, I'm going to have you thrown into space because he's like, here's the plan. She's like, you don't have a plan. And she goes off, and I love it. He's like, okay. Because bottom line is, she's like, look, I'm going to be tortured and killed. So it's either me or you, dude. So, and I love the way, and she was literally just awakened. She was only a few minutes awake when she literally has to start posturing. She literally is like, you know, I've had better food than this on the garbage scale, whatever she said. I mean, she instantly, I mean, that takes a lot to do something like that.
Yeah, I really love in this episode the way they set up the relationship between the military and the Tal Shiar. You know, that there's that Romulan distrust between them. And they really use that conflict well here. And I think this is, I mean, I don't remember a time before this when that was really that was really a big focus point of an episode the way it is here.
Right.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the strengths of this episode, getting that little more insight into Romulan society and Romulan military structure is fascinating.
Yeah.
And also getting a good look at their Art Deco ships.
Also, what I think made this a good episode is Star Trek has been one of those shows that for its whole existence has had really good guest stars. And the actress who plays the Romulan sub-commander also played a Romulan sub-commander in Contagion, the episode where the ship was infected by that alien probe and it was going to blow itself up. And she was Marasta Yale in First Contact. She was the lady on the planet who had developed warp drive, where the people freaked out because they discovered Riker. She's a really good actress. And I think that her being a Romulan commander, she has a presence about her. And I think that Marina Sirtis really rises to the occasion, and she acts very well against her. And it just shows you what incredible range Marina Sirtis actually had as an actress.
Yeah.
I think one of the dumbest things that TNG ever did was not make Carolyn Seymour's Romulan commander a recurring character.
Agreed.
She should have been like Commander Tomalak had been in the earlier seasons. She should have been that toward the end of the series. And this is season 6 that we're talking about. So, you know, this is late in TNG's run for Troy to be getting this kind of role. And on that point, Wayne says, at this point watching TNG, I just couldn't buy Troy as a Tal Shiar.
Why is that, Wayne?
That's very interesting.
Elaborate, Wayne. Maybe too gentle? Not gentle, that's not the word, but whatever.
Well, I think they did a good job. Kind of like Alan was saying earlier, she starts off very unsure of herself. And has to sort of build her confidence and sort of develop herself into the role as she goes along. I think they did a good job of it's not like she woke up and she just jumped right into it. You can sort of watch her evolution over the course of the episode as she sort of figures out how to do it and how to navigate and gets her bearings. But I think Marina Sirtis played it really well.
Yeah. And Keith mentioned that very key scene toward the end, like 2/3 of the way in, where she's basically tells Nivek, look, buddy, we've been doing your plan this whole time, and look where it's got us. We're going to do it my way now. And if you don't go along with me, I'm going to tell Commander Seymour to yeet you into space. You got it? And he's like, okay. And I love that scene so much. And okay, Wayne says, it just didn't seem like her nature. She really freaked out.
Okay. Now I wish that they had done this like 3 seasons earlier.
Yeah.
Because one thing the Star Trek shows were always good at was seeing something that works on the show and then building on it season after season. And I think if they by season 6 you don't really have time. You have 1 season left. So I wish someone had this idea in season 3 And then they could have developed this part of Troy for 4 more years, you know?
Yeah, with her doing like espionage missions and stuff like that.
Right.
Amazing. That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Piggyback on what you're saying, Wayne, I agree. I understand what you're saying, how it doesn't seem like it's her personality, but I do think there's a very interesting about her because as not a telepath, but as an empath, she also probably knows the best way to act. So, you know, she knows if she had been too demure, she probably could have sensed because basically, I also thought this is a very interesting episode to give you some insight into Romulan society. You know, we always talk about how we hate monolithic cultures. Like every single Klingon who's ever lived is all about honor. Every single Romulan is all about subterfuge. Well, you can see here, there's divisions in this world because she can't stand intelligence, the commander. And she even talks about what they did to her father. So I love something like that. So it's like not every Romulan is all about being sneaky and subterfuge. So I think she read the room, as it were, literally, to help craft the kind of person she became.
Yeah. One of the things that I sort of noticed this time around that I've heard every time I've watched this, but it really kind of stuck out to me this time. And I don't know if this is a new thing or not. I'm not sure, where the defector dude, the guy who had been, you know, in Romulan society, whatever, he comes back and he's like, the thing that had drawn him to Romulan culture is that devotion to morality. Like Romulans have a very, very strict code of what is right and wrong, and you know what you get when you're with a Romulan, basically. Is that something that we've really seen said that way before?
No,
because I can't remember if we'd gotten that in any earlier like TNG episodes.
I don't remember if we got that from Romulans before, but I know that like in Balance of Terror, the Romulans were the honorable ones. You know, like Mark Linder was a very honorable character.
Right.
That was before that attribute got moved over to Klingons. But no, I think it's an interesting development. I like the peek we got into Romulan society through this episode.
Right.
Yeah, I think picking up what you're saying, I think I made a note of that too because it has such real life parallels. Real quick, I do a lot of personal stuff. I do real quick personal. I was raised by a preacher. Obviously, my parents are religious, not extremely so, but religious. And I'm a believer, but I have different views, let's just say. And I have sometimes commented that I miss it. I miss the pure faith that my mom and dad had, where there was no doubt. There was a God, and there was hell and heaven, and there was a devil, and that was kind of end of story. And what she said about he said about the Romulan society, he was basically saying the world is black and white in Romulus. There's this and that. There's good and bad. There's us and them. There's no shades of gray. And, you know, as we know in our real world right now, we're dealing with that. It sucks for sometimes when you got to look at the world in shades of gray. It sure would be easier if you could just hate this group and love this group. But that's just not the way the world works. I think he got fed up with that. I was also going to point out that maybe he came back because he'd been gone for 20 years. He looked like his middle age. He was only an ensign. So maybe he didn't have any upward mobility.
Yeah, you're talking about the defector guy?
Yeah, the defector. Yeah. I was like, he's an ensign. I'm like, dude, what happened?
Every time I've watched this episode, I have forgotten that he's in this episode.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
He's not a very good actor.
No.
I made a note, like, you know how you do the thing where you're trying to show that you're trying to remember something? Right. And he would go, Ambassador Spock said. And then at one point he looks away like he has a dredge up. He says it's very important. Are you kidding me? You couldn't remember that?
It's what Joey from Friends called smell the fart acting.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's hilarious.
And one last thing, even though I really like the episode, at the end, I do have to say Picard said, this is great. Now we have this great path for, you know, people. I'm like, dude, I don't think you've created a good underground railroad. I mean,
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. I'm not sure how this creates a method to get more defectors out.
Yeah, the mercenary they hired to do the cargo thing was dirty, so they killed him.
Yeah.
The Tal Shiar is going to be pissed off because somebody killed one of their operatives and impersonated her. The captain's going to be out for blood. I don't think this is going to work.
No, you have alerted too many people to what you're doing to make this a viable option in the future.
Yes.
Matt Sweatman comments on Troy's abilities and says that she would be able to instantly sense if her subterfuge was working and adjust to it on the fly. Exactly.
Right.
So I just want to say that this is one of my favorite Next Generation episodes of all. And part of that is because it took a character that I had loved from the first episode. Nobody liked Troy. I was the only one who liked Troy in Encounter at Farpoint. And I'm just going to say she was not that well written. She wasn't that great, but I'm drawn to, as I've said before, drawn to characters with mental abilities. And I'm even more drawn to characters who have natural inhibitors on their mental abilities. So I was like ready made for being a Troy fan. And it, they gave her things to do here and there, but this is like this was payoff. This was like me saying, you know what? Thank you for throwing a bone to those of us who loved Troy from the very beginning and believed in the character when nobody else did.
Also, we talked about in the later episodes of these series, sometimes they give the characters who hadn't gotten a lot of media roles to do something to do. And sometimes that didn't pay off because it's almost like, oh, well, let's give them a role. Because I looked, and the episode after this is a classic, Tapestry, with Patrick Stewart. Of course, that's great. But the episode before this was to give LeVar Burton something to do. It was the episode Aquiel. So not a good episode. So she got a good, she got a good character exploration episode late in the series.
I mean, but he had ones before that were good. Speaking of defecting, The Defector was a good one. And he's had a number, and of course then there was all that terrible, Leah Brahm nonsense. But but every character gets a variable amount of focus episodes. And the thing that is kind of disappointing about a series like this ending and moving to the big screen is that you never get a Troy episode again. You never get a Beverly Crusher episode or anything like that. So it's always going to be the main three, that's going to be the focus of the film and whoever the big bad is. So, you have to go back and enjoy these kind of episodes.
Agreed, because until the series Picard season 3, they didn't get done right, because in the movies they made jokes about their boobs and Troy got violated. So they didn't do well by them in the movies.
No. Right. And the one time she did get something good to do, it was getting drunk.
And then get blamed for crashing the ship unfairly.
Don't get me started on that.
All right. Well, we're at past half an hour, so we need to move on to the next one.
know.
Which is Change of Heart.
Yeah.
Which I love.
It's a good one.
Yeah. It's because it's like right in the middle of the Dominion War storyline.
Yeah.
It's Troy and War. Not Troy. Still on Troy.
Troy and Worf.
Troy and Worf is so last.
Well, there was a Troy and
Worf. It's Dax and Worf. And I love Dax and Worf.
Yes.
But watching it again, and I didn't remember how many scenes in this episode are just like characters talking about nonsense that doesn't have anything to do with like plot or anything like that. I usually think of like season 6 DS9 as being a big, like, it's like we're into the serialization, the Dominion War. But I love that they just have whole scenes of people who are they're just talking about their life. You get a whole subplot with, O'Brien wants to beat Quark at Dabo, but I think that's one of the reasons.
Tonga.
Oh, was it Tonga?
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
One of those made up games.
Yeah. But I mean, I love that they just devote whole scenes to that sort of thing, because I think that's one of the reasons that like the characters on DS9 are so rich, is because you can just have a scene with people just talking about fishing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they just talk about whatever is like things that don't have anything to do with the plot. They're just being people.
Right.
Agreed.
I will say that I did not, going into this, I did not remember that there was a B plot or what it was. And I just, oh my God, it's just bad. It just does not interest me at all. I want to get on with the Dominion War, and I don't really give a crap about, beating Quark at poker or whatever it is. And I just thought that was so weak.
What I found interesting about this episode, as you were saying, Charles, it's a great episode. I found very interesting about it is, I think we may have talked about this before, is when Michael Dorn, of course, is introduced to the show, they didn't know for sure exactly what they were going to do with him. And when he was first meeting Nana Visitor and Terry Farrell, it was the episode where Dax had convinced Kira to go do some stupid medieval hollow suite thing, and they were coming out with medieval dress on. And Worf literally looks at her and says, "Nice hat," or something like that. That was all it was. And Ira Stephen Bear and company, literally looking at that one scene, said, hey, there could be something between those two. It was not planned or anything like that. And with the unfortunate exception of that episode that He Who Is Without Sin, that horrible Risa episode, what I like about Dax and Worf, Terry Farrell and Michael Dorn together is that they made each other better. Those characters built each other better and better. Right. It showed her strength. We already knew she had Klingon history because of her former host. She could poke at Worf like nobody because he's way too serious. And they worked, and I loved it.
On that point, Worf and Troy never made any sense to me.
No.
Never made any damn sense to me. No. But when you talk about Worf and Dax, that absolutely makes sense because she understands Klingon nature and Klingon culture, and she is not, she is not an empathic, Violet. She is a fighter. And she just gets his world. And I think that they make such a great couple. Matt points out that the B plot was a roundabout way to get Quark and Bashir to talk about their feelings about Jadzia. Yes, it was. And I still don't think it's any good.
And I could care less. The whole, I think those kind of plots nowadays wouldn't be done quite like that. I could care less about all their sick puppy love for Jadzia, for her.
But here's the thing, the whole thing that, Quark is only doing it to fleece, Bashir out of his latinum or whatever. But the thing is, the argument that he poses that gets Bashir is that whole thing about saying, we let her get away. You didn't let her get away.
She was never yours.
No. Exactly. She went to she had zero interest in either one of you, and she went to the person that she wanted to go to.
Absolutely.
Through you, Quark.
Yeah.
Well, the part about that I do like, though, is that Quark is savvy enough that he's playing this game with a genetically engineered guy who should be able to beat him.
Yes.
But he finds his weakness and knows how to beat him.
Absolutely.
And it's not by being better at math, and it's not by being better at strategy. It's by finding his weaknesses and exploiting it during the game. And that's a great use of being a Ferengi.
It is. Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. Even B plots that I don't enjoy, there's always a good angle to it.
And it ties back in with that sort of season 1 Bashir that everyone forgets about by this point in the show.
I just don't need to tie back to that.
Though. No, I know. But I think it just makes him feel like he's not a rebooted character. Like he's still the same guy. Yeah. He's just changed over the years.
Okay.
One of the things I did like about the episode was we talk about how Deep Space Nine was one of the first shows to really bring in just continual plots. I love the way they tied in the whole legend about how the Klingons killed their gods, and then they talked about how the hearts, that's the whole point when the Klingons mate, their hearts beat as one, and so Worf hears the heart when he's thinking about leaving Dax there. And here's the thing: I don't think any of us would have left our partners there. Right, in that situation. And this is why, as much as I love the episode, every single time I watch it, when Cisco is dressing Worf down at the end, I'm like, dude, you're the fool who put a man in his love, a woman in her love on the same freaking mission where you knew one of them might have to let the other one die. I blame Cisco for this.
Well, it was Kira that did it. It was
Kira who made the decision.
Yeah.
Kira made it.
And obviously you never saw her again in the episode. See, she threw the two of them to the wolves and then hit the road or something. I don't know.
I do like that scene though with Cisco because first you have as your captain.
Yeah.
This is what you should have done. This is what you did wrong. This is going to be repercussions.
Yeah.
As a man, I've done the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't?
Right.
And you know what? It's so interesting. You have an entire episode that is basically Cisco-less. He comes on at the end for about 2 minutes and he anchors that whole episode. He is such a force of gravity.
Yeah.
God, he just blows me away every time I watch him.
We've talked about this before, but I think DS9 is probably the show that has the captain out of the storyline more often than any other show.
Yeah.
But you don't feel it.
No.
Because when he's there, they make it count.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point because he's real good because in the episode when spoilers slightly, the episode where they have a battle with the Klingon fleet and Worf is accused of killing destroying a Klingon ship, at the end of that episode, Cisco dresses him down again. So he's real good for coming in there and giving one of those speeches.
Right. Yeah.
He's good at it.
Matt wonders, what bothers me about this is that now they have a policy to not let lovers together on missions.
Thank you, Matt.
Right.
I agree.
Like, I feel like that was a 20th century invention that they should have remembered.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, completely agree, Matt, because that makes no sense. Heck, in TNG, they did an episode that went the other way. When Picard fell in love with Neela Darren, she left the whole ship because she thought they couldn't work on the whole ship together, which I thought was sad. But at least they went on away missions like this together.
Right.
My workplace has rules in place about people who are in relationships.
Apparently, they need a Starfleet HR, which they clearly don't have.
No, there's no
Clearly.
Starfleet HR.
I want to make one last observation, and that is, and this is something that I've noticed before, but this is like the first opportunity to have mentioned it on the show. Terry Farrell, I mean, first of all, I think she's an amazing actress. Second, she is remarkable at sick and injured acting. Like, you a lot of times can see totally through, like, you don't ever believe that someone is, but she sells it. Like, you honestly believe that she got shot and she is bleeding out because it's like it happened to her at some point in her life, and so she knows how to channel that in her performance. But my God, is she good?
Yeah, and they gave that to her a lot.
They did.
Does get her a lot.
So either she had a lot of practice at it by this point, but no, she was odd. You know, like in Rocks and Shoals, same thing. There was a couple of other ones. She's just, maybe that's why they kept doing it.
Yeah,
they're like, dude,
probably.
she's really good at injured acting. Let's just beat her
up
to hell all the time.
Dax can take it.
And they make her really pale every time. Like, she always.
Yeah,
it works. I really love her back and forth with Worf in this episode.
Yes.
Yeah, with the humor and all that kind of stuff. It just works really well.
It really does.
Yeah,
excellent episode.
All right,
Excellent.
we'll move on to Good Shepherd.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't have a strong memory of this one. I know I've seen it before, but this is like, I don't. When you get deep into Voyager, I mean, like, these little episodes like this, I haven't seen that many times over the years.
Yeah,
So
me neither.
I enjoyed this one. I thought it was
definitely.
And I even like little scenes. Like, I mean, same kind of thing I was talking about with the DS9 scene, except for these aren't recurring characters. But I like the scene of just two Starfleet officers and one's like calling each other in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It just makes them feel like people.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
I wrote in my notes, this was another Lower Decks kind of episode.
Yeah.
That's exactly
what
what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I enjoyed this one too, but one of the notes, because I've seen this episode several times. I think I saw it even, in fact, as little as a year ago. One of the notes I put in there again was, I blame the commanders and not the people. You've got a relatively small ship way away in another part of the galaxy. Yeah. And I don't care what anybody, Chakotay was literally like, well, every time we try to get them to do something, they don't really want to do it. Like, seriously. You're 60, 70,000 light years from Earth, or 35, whatever the heck they are at that time. And a ship that small, every single crew member is critical.
Yeah.
I mean, critical. You can't be saying, well, he's a kind of a slacker, so I can't get him to... Are you kidding me? Seriously? You got a dude who literally just spends all his time staring at the stars? I blame Chakotay and Janeway for that.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is, and this is something that I've thought about before, and I don't think they ever really addressed it in an episode outside of this one and maybe another one, but they never like kind of dealt with it on an ongoing way, is that what do you do with these kind of characters? I mean, you can kick them out of Starfleet or whatever, but they're still on your ship.
Absolutely.
They still walk the hallways, and they're still going to go to, Neelix's, restaurant or whatever it is. So it's interesting to kind of watch. It would have been nice to see this develop a little bit more, but at the same time, I really enjoyed, the misfits kind of. I loved that. And I'm just going to say, I don't go back to Voyager that often, but every time I do, and especially this is a good one for this, every time I do, I remember, and not that I ever really forget this, but it reminds me how much I absolutely love Janeway. God, she's a great character, and Mulgrew is just a phenomenal actress.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I wrote in my notes that Kate Mulgrew sells her role. No matter what that role is, she makes it work.
Yeah. She commits 800% every scene that she's in.
I also did write in my notes with that one but the cosmologist. I was like, I'm trying to imagine him. She is a really patient captain. I'm trying to see him talking like that to Cisco, or Picard, or Kirk. His ass would have been snapped down because he was getting, after a while, I was like, he was getting really disrespectful.
He was getting pretty damn sassy. And I was like, I was about to jump to her defense. I was like, buddy, you better back down.
You're right. She's patient because Cisco's known for his dress downs, and he would have cut this guy in half.
Oh yeah. Yes. Oh yeah.
But I like that these folks all sucked in different ways.
Yeah.
Like the one guy's a jerk, and the other guy's a hypochondriac, and the girl she felt like she just didn't have the capacity to be in Starfleet. Like she got through by the skin of her teeth, and she felt like because she was Bajoran, they sort of felt bad and passed her through, but that she wasn't up to it. And what do you do now? You're on a starship in the middle of nowhere, and you feel like you just don't have it. You know, like that's tough.
That's so interesting. What a great character angle that would have been to follow through on.
More interesting than some of the main characters.
And one of the things Chakotay said, which is again why I blame maybe Janeway. Well, Chakotay's first officer, he's more in charge. I blame Chakotay more than Janeway, but he did make a good point based on like what you were saying, Alan, about seeing the backstory. He made a very good point. He said if we were in normal Federation space or whatever, people like this would have been reassigned by now. Maybe they're not suited for deep space missions. Maybe they're not suited for dangerous missions, but they would have been on a star base at Starfleet headquarters.
Right.
But out, but out there, what do you do with them? Also, I thought there was something that she was very interesting that this she said when she was talking to Janeway. Because I work in IT, and I used to work with a company called Citrix, which is a virtualization company. It was a really tough job, and that company made you train all the time. And I used to sit next to a guy. We'd take a training class that'd be a week long, and they would introduce a new concept to us. And I hate these kind of classes, but it's the kind of training class where they lecture you and then they make you take a little test to see if you. This guy would get it every single time. And I was like, dude, how do you do that? I'm known for being a hard worker, but I would do flashcards and stuff. I would go over the same stuff 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And then people are like, my God, Keith, you really are good at this. I'm like, if you knew how much. And then I love what she told Janeway. She's like, I have to study harder. And she thinks that everybody in Starfleet is like this super genius who just gets it. Not at all. Not at all. And I love that.
What I really love is that Janeway handpicked her entire crew. So unless they were Maquis, which none of these people were, then she selected them for a reason.
Good point. Yeah.
And it's a tough situation too. Like you said, you're 70,000 light years away. Right. And you can't replace your employees.
Right.
You know, like there are no other applicants.
Right.
You know, we've got X number of people, and every time we lose one, we have X minus one.
That's right.
You know, so it's like, what do you do?
Okay, let me get a few comments here.
All right.
Because some of this pertains to what we're talking about. Wayne says, fraternization is a serious deal in the military. Even married couples have to serve under different chain of command if they are stationed on the same base.
Good point, Wayne. So as we were saying earlier, they were like, hey, here's a new idea, new policy. Right.
He also says it's up to the leadership to find a way to motivate an individual to work with the team, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think that's what
leadership, not the individual.
And for those who don't remember, Wayne is a Marine. And I have learned, Wayne, that if you're no longer in the service, you're a Marine. So I'm joking with you, Wayne. I know not to say you're a former Marine. Wayne's a Marine. So he knows what he's talking about with military.
Right. And then he says, you can't dump someone because they are shirking their duties.
Amen.
I mean, you could. Captain Ransom probably would have. But you shouldn't.
He would have just fed them to the monsters.
Yeah. I mean, you'll get to the point where you don't have enough people.
Y'all ain't gonna believe.
At some point, you just need warm bodies. And that's something that they would have to adjust to in the Delta Quadrant. I'd love to have seen more of that on the show. Is that we have to adjust our expectations as well. Because you cannot reassign this person and replace them with a better candidate. There are no other candidates coming.
Exactly. Yep. I hate to say this. I never thought I'd go here, but can you imagine if this had been Jellicoe's ship out there?
But
there's no way.
Chuck, what you're talking about, though, you know, one of the things that we say about Voyager that they did not do is that we should have seen a depletion of resources, which they kind of paid lip service to, but they should have taken damage and not been able to repair it. They should have run out of things that they can't replace. And that should have been the case with the crew also. We should have seen crew depletions and it have an effect on the way the ship performs over the course of 7 seasons. And it was just, in that sense, it was just a standard Star Trek, you know, we're out on a starship kind of show when it shouldn't have been.
Right.
It should have been a ship that was set at sea that has no contact with land. If it runs out of its rations, what are you going to do? Kill, you know, go fishing and kill a shark? Maybe. But you have to, they paid lip service to that stuff, but we never got the angle on Voyager that we should have gotten.
And it always seemed to go the way that it always ends up like Janeway's right. The Starfleet ideal is right.
Yes.
But I mean,
yes,
every organization, you've got that person who can't show up on time, who just will not be there on time, no matter what you do. And if you have 4 other candidates, maybe you get rid of that person.
Veronica's holding their hand up.
But if you have 0 candidates and you have to get the work done, maybe you have to adjust your expectations, you know? So that's something I would love to have seen more of. Janeway having to deal with as a leader. There's no Starfleet Academy pumping out candidates.
Right.
You know, this is what I've got to work with.
I agree. And again, I blame Janeway and Chakotay for that, because I was thinking about the cosmology guy, as you guys are saying. Okay, he said, which is weird, he's like, I don't believe in practical applications. I only believe in theory. Well, what did we have on Voyager? We had astrometrics with 7 of 9 running it like a tyrant. Well, this dude's all about cosmology, so you can find a way to meld his interests and his abilities with what the ship needs, which is all kinds of astrogation. One of the jokes about Voyager is they're always stopping to investigate some stellar phenomenon. I mean, that's even Chakotay used to say that. Well, put him in charge of that. You got to find something for people like that to do, which I thought was interesting.
And I would have loved to have seen a recurring crew member who genuinely wasn't good enough and shouldn't have been there.
Thank you. Yes.
But this is the person we've got.
Exactly. You know? We have to rely on this person because there's nobody else. Everybody else is doing something.
Right.
Okay. Comments. Matt Sweatman says, I don't think Janeway was harsh enough when he shot that something.
Yeah. I kept looking to see if the alien was actually the alien. Yeah. He shot that little dark matter. I kept thinking, I've seen this episode very recently, but I kept thinking they were going to say something like the alien phased back into some other dimension. No, he straight up murdered that alien.
Yeah, he murdered somebody.
Yeah, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that is. I didn't think about that, but okay. Matt says all the Bajoran crewman needed was a little confidence. Otherwise, she wasn't that big of a misfit. No, agreed. And Keith is gone for some reason.
He'll be back.
Elaine says, I took it as the 3 crewmen were neurodivergent, which is not a bad thing at all. It's just their work style is going to be completely different from most everybody else, but they have a lot to offer in their own way. Yes, agreed.
I can see that.
Yeah, totally. I'm not sure what jerk off down in the bay studying stars had to offer, because you don't need that on the ship, right? So I mean, again, I'd love to see these 3 as recurring characters where we figure out what they have to offer.
But that's why I agree with that. That's what I was saying. They could have put him in astrogation because he's all about cosmology. They could have pressed him into working on the warp field because he's all about like space and stuff like this. So there was some other stuff they could have done.
I'd have loved to see him working side by side with 7 of 9. Because they would be
they would be like pulling each other's eyes out. That'd have been awesome.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, astrogation, astrometrics. I said astrogation. Astrometrics. Yeah, that's what he's
7 of 9 deal with someone who's more anal and abrasive than she is.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Final comment. Matt says, to Alan's point, the ship should have been very different after 7 years. In Ahsoka, we saw an Imperial Star Destroyer that was in another galaxy, and boy, the ship and the stormtroopers' armor looked like it had been through hell.
Yeah.
And we had that. We got that 2-part episode, Year of Hell. That's what we should have gotten over the course of 7 seasons of Voyager.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, Voyager would get back at the end of the show, and they can't just reassimilate into Starfleet.
Yeah,
no,
they've become too different. But I mean, as it is, you can see all of them just getting reassigned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And continuing
Actually,
on.
Voyager should look more like the Equinox when it got back.
Yeah, but less
Yeah.
murdery.
Yeah.
Ideally, yes.
But you know, I think what happens, and we talked about this before, it's kind of like when you talk about how Riker should never have been a first officer that many years. He wouldn't have been in real life. He wouldn't have been given the choice in real
Through
life.
the Dominion War, they have all these things. Every one of them should have been commanding a ship.
Yes. and I think what you get is you get a victim of how they want to write the show, because I keep this running list of Star Trek plots that kind of sort of don't make sense. I'd love to do a show about it one day.
Okay.
And one of the things
we got to do something next week. So
yeah,
It's true.
and one of the things that I did from the first time I saw this episode, and to the end, it bothered me. Tom Paris is the single best pilot on the ship, and it possibly in Starfleet. He is also the part-time assistant to the doctor.
Yeah.
There's a use for Maquis or whatever all the time, and no real spoilers. But in the series finale, when they're in a life or death battle, Tom literally has to run down to sickbay to assist the doctor. Yeah. There's a position that was open. And remember at one point, how many different jobs did Neelix appoint himself?
Yeah.
Cook, podcaster. He started training for security, ambassador. I mean, again, as Wayne was saying, you would find roles for these people, and you may not want it, but just like, dude, sorry, you got it. End of story.
Everybody on
to be the doctor's assistant.
I was going to say the Bajoran woman should be the doctor's assistant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in a situation like that in a starship should be cross-trained with some other area. And when you're stranded with no other contact, of your support, that becomes even more crucial. So I think that there should have been a way to integrate these people somewhere.
Right.
The new
you got to be able to find
Galactica,
something, even if it's helping Neelix cook dinner. Just
no, seriously, yes.
I was gonna say the new Battlestar Galactica did a good job of that, because everyone was sort of just thrust into their roles. Yeah, and there was a bit where they were trapped on a planet, and the one girl, they're about to be in a life and death struggle with the Cylons, and the one girl's like, I just signed up to pay for dental school.
Yes. Yes, and there's truth to that. So that means there's a whole group of people down there, also including now those Equinox people who just don't seem to do anything. Remember the 3 people who survived Equinox? Yeah. And there's always been like, what happened to those folks?
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Yeah, people just disappear into the bowels of Voyager, and there's only 150 people on the ship.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that was 3 good episodes this week.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
Ones. Absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, we only have one more of these left before we run out. I did peek ahead.
Yeah.
And I know the DS9 one is a good one.
I did too, but I don't remember what. It was a couple of months ago that I did that.
No. It's Paper Moon.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
that's right.
That's going to be, no matter what else happens, that's going to be a good one to go out on.
Ooh,
yeah,
baby. That's a heavy one.
That's
holy cow.
So yeah, and until I think Discoveries will be the next thing up, and we'll have live Star Trek again to talk about. Until then, we're gonna be talking about some legacy Star Trek topics. So throw some ideas in our discussion group if you have something you'd like to see us discuss, because we'd love to hear some great ideas, and we've got some ideas of our own cooking that we're gonna keep it fun, and we're gonna try to bring some guests on and friends on and things like that over the course of the season. So stay tuned, because we've got some fun stuff coming up.
Okay, 2 last comments.
Okay.
Wayne says, in the submarine service, the crew are required to know several disciplines on board.
Absolutely.
I bet.
And Matt Switman says, any DS9 one is going to be a good one. Mostly true.
Alamarine.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I'm going to argue for that.
Keith mentioned that Risa one earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite DS9.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Because even in the early DS9s, at least it was early, but by season 4, they knew better.
Exactly. You're supposed to know what you're doing by this point.
Exactly right. You just made trials and tribulations. You're better than this.
Okay, we just got another show topic: shows we hate.
That's a good one. Yeah,
we can do that.
Yes.
All right, Alan, where can people find more of you?
Okay, how about you go to Cosmic Creative, KOZMICCreative.com. Okay. And from there, you can jump on to any of my other podcasts like Modern Musicology, where we have just released an episode this past week reviewing the new Beatles song, Now and Then. We had a full hour discussion just on one song. It was great. And our guest for that was Ira Elliott, the drummer from the band Nada Surf. And we've got an episode coming up this coming week all about the great producers. So go check it out.
How about you, Keith?
You can find me on X and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
And Veronica, there's a big birthday coming up.
Yes.
Is there?
It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Jesus' birthday
Yep.
is coming up.
Yep.
Oh.
And the devil has decided that Jesus needs a birthday party.
Yep.
And so the devil is throwing Jesus a birthday party, and we've been booked. So
What is this craziness you're
so
talking
come
about?
to Jesus' birthday with strippers at the Red
Oh
Light
my
Cafe.
goodness.
Burlesque and strippers and puppets and
Yeah. We've never been booked by the devil before, so it's exciting for us.
Yeah.
You
So
did hear me say my dad was a preacher, right?
So December the 9th at the Red Light Cafe. Now, if you're a very religious person, maybe don't come.
Yep.
But December the 9th at the Red Light Cafe will be at the Sinful Variety Show, and it is called Jesus' Birthday with Strippers. And
Oh, wow.
we'll be performing there. It's gonna be a fun night.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
you know.
Okay, so go ahead with the rest of your, because I got to throw a thing in.
And where else can people find us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
And
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
that's right. And we just have recently released an episode. We went to the record release party for Mickey Dolenz new EP. Dolenz sings REM, and it was fantastic. We did a recap episode plus review of the EP. The event was phenomenal. There was like 500 people there. REM came.
Wow.
We had a crazy time. So check out that episode. But also next week we'll have a bonus episode. This is our first Monkeying Around bonus episode where we're not talking about the monkeys. We're talking about some of the top current artists in the world, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. So
I know, right? What decade are we living in?
exactly right. So we couldn't let that go by. So we've got our Beatles and the Rolling Stones episode where we're talking about Now and Then and Hackney Diamonds, and that should be out next week. So check that out. And then following that, at the end of November, we've got a special head soundtrack discussion coming out, which Alan was kind enough to join us for. So we've got a several great Monkeying Around episodes coming out. So give them a listen.
Killer. I should mention also that in addition to podcasting and writing books and all that kind of dumb stuff, I'm also in a band.
Oh.
And if you live in the Atlanta area and you might happen to be going to a convention in later this month called, I think it's like a week away, called Conjuration, my band is going to be performing. My band is called Hardisons. We are a heart tribute band, and you can come to Conjuration and see us perform.
Awesome.
There you go. Are y'all going to be at Conjuration?
No.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All right, Veronica. Do you have a closing for us this week?
I want to be pampered.
Perfect. All right, folks. Join us next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We go live on YouTube and Facebook. And if you missed that, you can subscribe to the Earth Station Trek on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us, or you can watch the replay on YouTube.
And subscribe there too.
Subscribe, like it,
all the things.
That's right. And we'll
All
see you
those
next
YouTube
time.
things.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Take care, y'all.